Sure. So again, thank you everybody. Welcome. And we just wanted to do something that we haven't really been doing, and that is making sure that we come to you. Some of you have been a part of the roundtables with Black press that we've done as Black Lives Matter overall. This is the first time we're pulling folks together as Black Lives Matter Grassroots. And part of what's been happening is we really understand that the world sees Black Lives Matter as a single entity. And so we've been moving in that way, although we're actually several different entities. And one of the things that just came out was yesterday, Aaron, who's on this call, his piece in the AP, which was published also in the Washington Post, talked about Black Lives Matter Network Foundation. We want to be very clear, and the reason that we introduced ourselves in the way that we did is because we want to be very clear about who we are as Black Lives Matter, that Black Lives Matter Grassroots is Black Lives Matter. So I know most of you, but my name is Melina Abdullah. I'm director of Black Lives Matter Grassroots and co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. I have been doing the work of Black Lives Matter since day one, so literally since July 13th. 2013, when the world erupted in the aftermath of the acquittal of the murderer of Trayvon Martin. I was one of the people in the streets who helped to engage in intuitive organizing for the first 3 days, and then was a part of the intentional coming together of Black Lives Matter as written about widely at St. Elmo Village on July 15th, 2013. And we built and worked and labored in the streets to build the largest racial and social justice movement in U.S. history, and perhaps in global history. We've put our bodies on the line. We've put our freedom on the line. Many of us have, caught cases. We've faced down white supremacists, and we continue to do the work. We engage in a mantra and have always engaged in a mantra of just do the work and live and move as righteously as possible. And so some of what that's meant is not really seeking recognition or spotlight for our work, but trying to do the work on behalf of our people. One of our spiritual guides reminds us that some people are motivated by movement. We are the people who are motivated by movement. But there's also a professional class of people who may not be as present in the streets and see this as a profession or a way to make a living. That is not us. Black Lives Matter is about moving the work and about really struggling on behalf of our people. So in the midst of attacks, in the midst of criticisms and critique, what we've been doing is right here in Los Angeles is struggling for justice in the name of Brian Twyman. Finally, one of the killer cops who's murdered someone in Los Angeles County is on trial. Andrew Lyon, who's the LA County Sheriff's deputy who murdered Brian Twyman, is on trial. And so we claim that. We've been organizing with his family since 2019. Angela will tell you that in Michigan, we've been moving work to struggle for justice in the name of Patrick Leolia. We can talk about the work that's being done to end police associations, to support Black-owned businesses, to lift up Black women through our Black Women Are Divine work. And also in the midst of one of the most traumatic experiences, I think, of any of our lives, the massacre of Black people and Black grandmothers in Buffalo. We're moving that work. And so we're on our way to Buffalo to make Black Lives Matter, to end white supremacy. That's the work of Black Lives Matter Grassroots. We want to be very clear that the Black Lives Matter Network Foundation does what it does, and we are Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter Grassroots is the boots on the ground, is the people in the streets, is the organizing work to, again, face down killer cops, face down unjust institutions, oust folks who are white supremacists in office, and really lift up Black people and struggle in the names of those who were stolen by state-sanctioned violence. The charge of Black Lives Matter has always been to end state-sanctioned violence against Black people in all of its forms. And so that's what this call is today, is to make sure that you're familiar with Black Lives Matter Grassroots, which again is the on-the-ground work. It's the assembly of chapters who have tied ourselves together through a set of guiding principles and a mission, again, to end state-sanctioned violence against Black people. And so with that, I love to pass it on to Angela, my sister from another Mr. Angela Waters Austin, who is doing amazing work in Lansing and in Black Lives Matter, Michigan.
Thank you, Melina, and thank you for lifting up Patrick Lyoya. We are still continuing to support his family and to fight for justice for Patrick, where a Grand Rapids cop put a gun to the back of his head and pulled the trigger and is being defended by the Fraternal Order of Police. So definitely want to make sure that we stay in context about why we do the work and on whose behalf. So I get to talk about financial reports. I get to talk about 990s. And I'll just be honest that I haven't reviewed them with a fine-tooth comb, nor am I a CPA or an attorney. I can look at them from the perspective as one who has to create or who has to contribute to 990s. And it's something that all nonprofits have to do. Filing late, those things are very common. And also, there are items in the 990s that I have questions about, and I would like to just lift up one particular area, is that there's a statement that funds have been granted to grassroots, and I just want to clarify that those funds were granted to the Tides Foundation to establish the BLM Support Fund.
At the prompting of?
At the prompting of the grassroots team that you see before you. We made the decision that we wanted to create a space to hold chapters and to pour into the work of organizers on the ground, driven by the needs of our families, of survivors, of communities who are being targeted and attacked. And we decided that we wanted to create an infrastructure and a foundation for the work that is rooted in Black liberation principle, in the BLM principles, and that could really hold organizers who are under attack in so many ways. And I can just speak to Lansing, where in April 2020, there was a dress rehearsal for the insurrection at the Michigan State Capitol. And I spent a year in safe housing because business owners, downtown business owners, were threatening to shoot BLM organizers on the street. So when I see that there is a safe and secure location that organizers can go to and find sanctuary, that to me says that's actually where we need to go as a movement. If I can't go into a grocery store and know that I can make it home safely, we have to think about safety in different ways. And as Black people, we get to name what safety looks like for us, and we actually get to build what that means for us. We didn't purchase the home. We didn't know about the purchase of the home, and we deserve to have safe places for healing, to do our work, and to know that we are not going to be interrupted in that work.
Thank you. Wanted to circle back and see if there's anything on top of that that you want to add, Dr. Abdullah, to the question that we see posed a lot on social media, and in particular, you know, in the right-wing media, but in the MSM too, is where's the money?
Right. So we need to be clear that the $90 million that poured into Black Lives Matter in 2020 and any subsequent donations, because we know money didn't just stop coming in 2020, was poured into the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. They did provide a sizable contribution to the Black Lives Matter Support Fund, which is held by tithes. However, the overwhelming majority of that money sits with the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. According to the most recent reports and a call that they did with who they called stakeholders, said that they have $43 million of that remaining.
Any other commentary on that before we move on to the next thing on the agenda? As we're keeping it moving here.
I'll just underscore what Angela shared. The Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is not an entity that we have any decision-making power over or influence in. None of us have ever been staff or board members for the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, which was initiated in 2020. Up until 2020, Black Lives Matter was just Black Lives Matter. And in 2020, they founded the Global Network Foundation. We also founded the Black Lives Matter Grassroots as the collective of chapters at the end of 2020 in September of 2020.
So there's three entities. There's the Black Lives Matter Political Action Committee, there's the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, and then there's the Black Lives Matter Grassroots, which is actually the original Black Lives Matter, just to be clear.
Yes.
Okay. I know that Audrina was going to talk a little bit about some of the misinformation.
Thank you for the prompt, Dominique. There's lots of news coverage out there, and of course, anything that looks salacious, anything that looks like it can easily be misconstrued and misunderstood, gets repeated often, along with misrepresentation of what it is. But I think what we want to encourage everyone here to keep in perspective is that this is long-standing treatment of Black organizations, particularly Black liberation organizations. All we need to do is remember what happened with Marcus Garvey. All we need to do is remember the ways in which even Du Bois and the NAACP were attacked, the ways in which Martin Luther King was attacked, or the ways in which Jesse Jackson and others have been attacked. And that doesn't mean that folk were without fault. It does mean that anything that they did was attacked. And so that is no different here. I'm sure you all are aware of that. I think what we want to clarify and iterate here is the role that we play, which, as Melina has referred to, is boots on the ground. We know that the right wing is picking up its attack globally. The Supreme Court is in the hip pocket of right wing power structure. The political winds, and so we anticipate that we will get hit more and more often. But what's important to us is that Black folks understand and know what's happening here, and are reminded that this is historic in the way this is a historic process for the way in which Black folks are demonized. We see that even when our folks are murdered by the police, in the way in which they get re-victimized and their families are re-traumatized by the way they're cast in the media to make the offending officers, the murderous officers, look innocent. And so that's the context in which we find ourselves. And because we do the work and are the boots on the ground, what we want to be really clear about is that that's our focus. That's where we are. That's how we are using our funds, as Melina explained, giving it to the community. We're using it for the purpose of organizing for the work, to go to places like Buffalo, to show up back in the day in Ferguson, to be present with Trayvon Martin's family and many other families that have been hurt by state-sanctioned violence.
Our goal is to try to hit Q&A within 10 minutes here at the most, maybe less. A couple things I want to follow up on, though. When we talk about right-wing conservative media attacks, I want to go drill down a little there, but I also want to talk about the questions and controversies, if you will, that come from people that are supportive of Black Lives Matter, or people that have been part of the movement, or people even inside the movement, so that I know that there's sort of a desire not to throw Black people under the bus, to be united, to be strong and purposeful and focusing on the work and not getting distracted. At the same time, there's a real duty and desire to be fully transparent. Right. So let's we'll circle back to the right wing, and then we'll come to the more sincere kind of conversations, critiques, questions. So for right wing talking points, I want to say even to the far right wing, I want to get some clarification. I don't know if this is you or Dr. Abdullah or someone else on the leadership team, that there have been, even from the far right, no allegations of illegality, right? Of crimes being committed.
That's right. According to the 990s and according to what Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation reported about itself, there are no allegations of illegalities. And we, again, want to be very clear that we are not the Global Network Foundation, so it's difficult for us to speak to that because we have had access beyond any of the access that anybody else has had. So we haven't actually seen the 990s, although we hear that they're up on a website now. But we haven't been able to go through the 990s. We didn't have any access to that. So as far as we know, there is no illegality. We haven't witnessed any, but we want to be very clear that the new board that was announced are not people we know. And there's one person who's on that board who was a paid consultant for Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation for some time. So we have known him, but he's not, none of them are on the ground. We're the on the ground work. So we don't really have very much that we can add beyond what reporters can figure out for themselves. Again, we do want to lift up that we think it's fine for them to own a house. We weren't part of that decision-making process, but nonprofits own houses. And as Angela shared, we can think of many, many uses for a house like the one that they purchased, and would love to influence how that house could be used. Be different kinds of influencers, maybe using that house for things like healing, justice, and gatherings of Black folks, and safe houses when we're run out of our own homes. But we think that it's fine for nonprofits to own homes. We think that it's great that people pour resources into Black Lives Matter, and that Black nonprofits should have resources so that we could do work. And we're hopeful that resources will move to the on-the-ground work, which I know is what Carlene and I talk about in just a moment.
Yeah, and I don't want to go point by point over all these right-wing talking points, but since you pivoted somewhat, Melina, and we talked about maybe things that haven't been heard in the press before, one of the criticisms is the overuse of consultants, and that the money from Black Lives Matter went to a lot of consultants. I mentioned one of those consultants now on the board of BLM Global Network Foundation, and the fact that person's for-profit company was a recipient of I think $2 million contract. So I want to talk about, like, is that something that you can speak to as far as a self-critique or some kind of a reflection on the use of these consultants and the way that's played out at the Global Foundation, recognizing that those are two separate organizations, BLM Grassroots or two separate branches?
So I'll take a breath on that one. I do want to be intentional in my language. I think that it's a general practice of most nonprofits and movements that those who make decisions, especially financial decisions, there's distance between them and those who receive financial benefits. So that's my analysis of it. I'm not in the Global Network Foundation, never have been. I do think that, I'll be straight up on this part, and I won't mince words, that I think that those who do work on the ground should have say-so in how resources move, and that's not what we're seeing right now.
On the scoop piece, I wanted to see if you're ready to share what's happened with the social media platforms of Black Lives Matter at this point. Adrina, you want to speak to that, or Melina, you want to speak to that, or?
I think Carlene is going to talk about Buffalo.
We're moving on. Okay.
Oh no, I missed. What were you asking us to say?
I was asking about the social media platform.
Oh, the social medias. So we don't have access. So let me say that super quick. We don't have access to social media.
So Black Lives Matter social media.
We don't have access to Black Lives Matter social media. So for the last 2 years, Black Lives Matter Grassroots were the primary folks who posted and shared and tweeted, and we had shared access to social media with the Global Network Foundation. We were primary on that because we're the work on the ground, and we should be the voice of the movement, and there was recognition of that. About 2 months ago, there was some disagreement, and the Global Network Foundation, the person who was leading the Global Network Foundation, who was a consultant, unilaterally made the decision to log us out of social media. So we no longer have direct access to our Instagram page, which we built over the last 10 years and has 4 million followers. We don't have direct access to our Twitter page, which we built over the last 8 years and it has 1 million followers. So we're encouraging everybody to follow BLM Grassroots, which is our new handle for the on-the-ground work as we try to regain access to the Black Lives Matter handle.
Currently in the hands of consultants under the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation?
Yes.
Okay, I know we're a little behind, but yes, Carlene, you were going to talk about Buffalo.
Yeah, just quickly to underscore what has already been said. The work on the ground is simply about love for Black people. Black Lives Matter is a clarion call, it's a declaration, and it's emerging out of our deep love and belief that the legacy of our ancestors are at stake, right? And white supremacy has not stopped. In Buffalo, once again, we are called to this place where we have borne witness, where Black people's lives are stolen.
Jump on and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. First, I just want to center it and check in with Melina and the others. But the work is the work. But how are you doing as an individual, as a person? How has the weight of the toll, when we read the things in the media and other outlets that seem to attack you as individuals? I just want to know how you are doing as a person. We can get to the other stuff later.
Thank you, James. Thank you for asking that. Thank you for the care. this is heavy for us. To be really clear, what I shared with both my chapter and our leadership team is trying to navigate this feels very much like trying to figure out things when my family moved in a different direction, right? And so many of us, all of us, have poured so much work into Black Lives Matter. For me, it's a calling and a purpose. I often say that I found Black Lives Matter when we birthed Black Lives Matter. It gave a very clear purpose for my life. And so making sure that we maintain the integrity of BLM and continue to have the resources to do the work is really, really important. I can fight police and white supremacists all day, and I do, right? It doesn't kill my soul. In fact, it feeds my spirit. That kind of fighting. The struggle for the soul of Black Lives Matter is one that is much heavier for me. And so I carry that weight even as we continue to do the work. So, we're all headed out to Buffalo this week. I think universally many of us feel very heavy. I don't often sob. Sometimes tears will fall, but I don't often sob. But I think many of us have been sobbing since Saturday. We think about the theft of the lives of our grandmothers. Those were our grandmothers and elders and church deacons, and that's heavy. And I think right in this moment we feel attacked by all sides. So some people know that I'm in a fight on my campus around anti-Blackness on campus. There's, how the question also of how do we, as we talk about what happened in Buffalo, and I won't go on, this is my last sentence, I promise. But when we think about Buffalo is not just a question of gun control. It's a question of how do we stomp out violent white supremacy that is the foundation of this country. It calls for a complete transformation of things. And we don't have all the answers. What we do know is that ancestors and the spirits of people like Miss Pearlie and Miss Ruth and Miss Cat have called us to invest all that we can in building a world that's fit for your children and my children and generations to come. So I'm not good is the short answer. I'm not good, but we will be good. We will win.
I would interject here too that this is where the role of the Black press is so important. If we look back historically, you can look at what happened, the attacks on Marcus Garvey, the attacks on Dr. Martin Luther King, the attacks on Malcolm X, on every movement, pretty much Black liberation movement in our nation's history. The Black press and the Black people within mainstream press are the ones that have the perspective to tell the story differently and put something different on the record, and that's why I think it's so important that all of you are here.